Right, we're back live with you tonight. You're in Focus, and thanks for staying on. The Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele, says the Special Investigating Unit investigations into COVID-19 procurement has to date resulted in 456 referrals to accounting officers for disciplinary action. This comes after President Cyril Ramaphosa ordered the probe into irregular procurement of PPE that occurred during the previous national state of disaster that began in March 2020. For more on this, we're now joined by Kaizer Kganyago, the Special Investigating Unit spokesperson. Dr. Kganyago, good evening, and thank you very much for your time. Of course, that answer comes because there's been a challenge to the recent declared state of disaster. In fact, in some of the court papers that ALTA has filed, here's the reason why they are giving. They're saying the state of disaster may be used to fast-track reckless and environmentally harmful procurement with reduced oversight. Under national state of disaster, fast-tracking of procurement is available to all departments. The COVID-19 national state of disaster showed how many authorities and businesses took advantage of the relaxation of rules and oversight, and how even real-time auditing by the AG could not prevent the widespread abuse. So I look at that and I'm saying, they are saying to us today that, well, look at the work that the SIU has done. That should give you confidence that the SIU will go after people who will try and abuse this national state of disaster. So that number that we are given, 456 referrals, is that a tip of the iceberg in the number of investigations that you're using, or is that the sum total that was able to bring back some of the money that was stolen?
Yes, the 450-something, it's more the issues that relates to the disciplinary referrals. But there's a lot of money that we had to recover from people, and over and above that, there is money that we prevented from being stolen, because we got in at a time when some of the monies had not been paid. You remember at the time we had to freeze some of the bank accounts and make sure that the monies, like for example, Ndlovu, and laboratory services matter, where we were able to then recover and freeze the monies that were in the bank accounts. And all of that we have done because this is based on what was before us at the time, and we did the investigation in all government departments, in all provincial governments, in all municipalities. Therefore, it was one of the biggest investigations that we've ever done.
And I'm interested in that because that is really important, because you had then the backside view generally to look at all these departments and how they operated during that state of disaster. Do you think the state of disaster was the cause, at least, that allowed them to fast-track this reckless and harmful abuse of public funds?
I don't think it is because of the state of disaster. It is just because people thought that there is laissez-faire, and now that there is a state of disaster and some of the regulations are relaxed, they can do as they wish, because there was this culture that was created prior to that people can do wrong things and nothing will happen to them. Therefore, the issue of consequence management was not there. And that is why when we came in, it was very clear that it was about consequence management, and that is what we did. Therefore, we cannot blame it on the state of disaster. It is people. I don't think there is any process anywhere that says you can just send WhatsApp messages to your friends and say, send me your company, then I'll give you business without following process. When the process is stipulated, whether it is in an emergency or not in an emergency.
Yeah. Quite interesting that. So you're saying even during the state of disaster, there were stipulated processes that would need to be followed, and that in itself would guarantee a degree of oversight, would it not?
Definitely. Even during the state of disaster, where we still are not allowed to defy the Constitution, and the Constitution is very clear that every process of procurement must be in a fair manner. Therefore, immediately you do anything that is not in a fair manner, you know that you are going against the constitution of the country. But also, in emergency process, you are just shortening the process, but it doesn't mean there is no process. There is a process, and you still need to follow. And that is how we are able to recover the money because we go to court and say, this is what the process said during an emergency. You'll remember, for example, there was a process that was done by Treasury where they said a mask should not be above this amount. And if you then they say a mask cannot be more than 45 rand and you sell it for 200 rand, already you've gone beyond the process. You know what you have done is wrong.
Now, how do you read this, I mean, in terms of the investigations? Was it authorities that took advantage of this reduced oversight? Or was it businesses that took advantage of this? Or the third option would be, was it businesses linked to authorities?
Oh, yeah, the third option, both of them were complacent in this matter. There are people who were in the authority who thought they will then make quick buck, but also there were businesses that were there. If you remember, at the end of our investigation, we did what we call systemic recommendations. Yeah. Because we were looking at the systems and looking where things went wrong. And we were able to see, for example, that there were no checks and balances. For example, there were companies that were in the process of being deregistered. They were stopped because there was now eating time. There were companies that were created few days before the state of, when the state of disaster was done. They were created few days before, and already they were qualifying to get these big contracts. And that in itself was something that was created by both businesses and the people who were officials. Therefore, that collusion was very clear in the investigations.
So, tell me about those recommendations. If we are, as we seemingly will go in that direction when it comes to the energy crisis and the procurement that will need to go into that, what needs to be embedded in the system to prevent abuse? Because it seems even the real-time auditing of the Auditor General did not help us in this particular case to prevent the abuse.
Obviously, I think from our recommendation with the PPE, it was very clear that the people who are supposed to do their work, especially in the departments or municipalities, they are supposed to do what they're supposed to do. There must be checks and balances. There must be clear following of the rules. Therefore, if anybody doesn't follow the rule, that person must be dealt with harshly. Because we have created, but it's just that the recommendations are not as general as that, because we will look at each and every investigation we're doing and say, in your area, these are the problems. In this one's area, these are the problems. But generally, it was an issue of saying people do not just follow prescript, they just had the intention to steal the money. And in the main, it is also making checks and balances around the issue of pricing. Because if you look at the issue of pricing, you'll realize that when there is an emergency, every time people think they can take prices up. Just take a simple example of people who were drinking alcohol during that time. Because alcohol was closed, those who had alcohol were selling it at 4 or 5 times the price, because they take advantage of the situation. Therefore, it was also happening in the procurement of government, and that they were overpricing deliberately, also because the other people who are inside, they wanted to benefit out of these processes. Right.
From the cases that you had pursued, have there been any arrests? Because part of the deterrent, I mean, they're saying like, well, look, the SIU will go after you. If you think you will steal, they'll go after you. They'll find you. They can connect the dots. Even if you took the money and bought a car and gave it to your auntie or gave it to your squeeze or whatever, they'll find it and they'll follow it and bring it back. I mean, is that enough, you think, to deter people from wanting to abuse the system?
From where we're sitting, it can always not be enough, but we have done what the mandate says we must do. But we have then, after that, referred some of these matters to the National Prosecuting Authorities. And I'm pleased to say that the work that we have done between ourselves and them has yielded a lot of results. For an example, 2 weeks or so ago, there was a person who was in the office of the Premier in the Eastern Cape who was sentenced to 10 years for the PPE fraud that he had done. And that person is in jail as we speak. He was a so-called messenger in the office of the former MEC Gomba. And then there's another one in KwaZulu-Natal, also on PPEs. The person was found guilty for PPE fraud because he did not indicate his involvement in one of the contracts that he was involved in, and he defied the PFMA, and that person was sentenced to 2 years, even though it was suspended. But at the end of it all, you can see that really there is movement, and a lot of things are starting to happen. We are done with the investigation, but the consequence management is the one that is continuing to happen. We are monitoring that very closely. We are monitoring also the people who resign. For example, when the head of department in the health department in Limpopo resigned when she realized that we were coming closer to her, and we went and we freeze the pension, because it is important so that when we have to recover, we need to find the money that we need to recover from.
So, I mean, you've just mentioned two instances in the Eastern Cape and the one in KwaZulu-Natal. And people look at that and they say, you know, the SIU ends up only catching the messengers, but it doesn't catch the big fishes who are the ones really who are behind these abuse of procurement.
But me and you know that that is not true. For us, it doesn't matter who you are. You will know that when this PPE investigation started, we ended up with MECs losing their jobs in Eastern Cape, MEC in Gauteng losing their job, and then many others, people who were superintendent generals and so on, were disciplined. Therefore, for us, it's not about what position you hold. It is a matter of whether the things are pointing us to you, and that is what matters, and consequence management has to happen. Therefore, that debate that says we go, because even this person, he might be called a messenger, but the fact of the matter is this person forged a signature of the head of procurement and gave somebody a tender to the value of 23 million. Whether you are a messenger or not is neither here nor there.
The big question for me, I suppose, and the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is to say, as South Africans, should that give us confidence, right, to say, here's another state of disaster that's been declared. Who knows how many billions of rands are going to be available for procurement in fixing power stations, in buying solar panels, in buying every other thing that needs to be bought in order to navigate us out of this energy crisis. Does the work that the SIU is doing and that they have done give us a degree of confidence that, look, the coffers will be safe?
I think it should. It should give you, because we do not just do it. You must understand that we investigate corruption, but we also investigate malpractice and maladministration. And therefore, with that portion of maladministration and malpractice, we look at processes. Therefore, we have made recommendations for the change of processes so that things can be done. Because for us, it doesn't matter how much money is put out there. It doesn't matter whether it buys whatever it buys. All we want is processes to be followed. People who get the business must get them in a fair manner. There mustn't be any collusion. Therefore, obviously, these are people who would always try and find ways. But we are saying, proactively, we've done our work. Proactively, we have indicated to the people who are responsible for these processes what to do. Therefore, if they continue to do it, it will be them who are getting out of the realm of what they are supposed to do. And we will be watching them, because we work from the beginning with government to make sure that we monitor all the processes. Wherever they see something is not happening, we try and stop it even before the payments are done, so that we don't have to worry about following the money after.
Kaizer Kganyago, we appreciate you as always. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. That is the spokesperson for the Special Investigating Unit, Kaizer Kganyago.